We're back at it again on a Monday. I saw the Odyssey over the weekend, ladies and gentlemen, and all right, I want to get my opinions on it first out of the way because, this is honestly the most controversial thing out of this weekend. A lot of people are concerned whether or not they should go even see this. They don't like the casting choices of Elliot Page. They don't even know who he's playing. And admittedly, he's playing somebody that you don't even really recognize, Sinon. You know what I mean? I'm just like, all right, fine, not Achilles, that works for me. Helen of Detroit, admittedly, was not that bad. She was in all of maybe less than 10 minutes of the movie. Her relationship with Menelaus was poorly represented. She's not really this timid figure like she was kind of portrayed in the movie. She speaks out a little bit more. She has a little bit more of this kind of, it's assumed to be a little bit more of a willing relationship with Menelaus, but whatever, it doesn't particularly matter. And she, like I said, she's in so little of the film, it doesn't necessarily matter unless you really want to make a deal of it. So, besides all of that, and spoiler alert, I'm just going to say it right now, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, Elliot Page dies within, the first couple minutes of the movie, and then it's just flashbacks from there, where it's, I guess you figure out, give this object that really means a lot to Antinous and all this sort of stuff. Antinous, Robert Pattinson, I wasn't the biggest fan of his characterization. I wasn't a big fan of, generally, a lot of the suitors' material. I wasn't a big fan of Penelope's characterization. I thought Anne Hathaway's performance was relatively weak in some areas. I thought the forced-in nature of a lot of her freakouts, where I've sat on that throne for 20 years and my experience would be amazing, and if only a man could not be the only one who sits on the kingdom throne of Ithaca. I'm like, in ancient Greece, come on, sister, that no woman would understand, especially a woman of nobility, where her influence is more so behind the scenes. It's understood that's exactly how women bear influence on this society. Ooh, Cersei's characterization, not a big fan of it, because my mom pointed this out when we went to go see it. She wouldn't have been living in that sort of squalor, especially if she's like the child of nobility, as it has been spoken about. I understand that she was sent to this island as a form of punishment, but even still, and also, she's not nearly as beautiful as you'd expect her to be. In the books and whatnot, in the book, excuse me, she's, books, I guess, because she's referred to in many different texts and whatnot. She's had many different descriptions, but in general, she's described not as this kind of, frumpy bitch that lives in, this gross little hovel like she does in the movie. And also, the turning the men to pigs thing was with a wine substance, and she waved her wand to do it. In the movie, she does this kind of thing where she has them eat the stew, and then she, literally, breaks their bones to make them look like pigs. It's a really strange, I think they only did it for, the extra horror element, and I'm going to be honest with you, I think it would have been weirdly a little bit more horrifying if she, because of her raw power, was able to just kind of move this stick in the air and was able to make the wine have its effects like it does in the story. Whatever, it's just a weird choice. Also, I was going to say his relationship with Cersei, because he does sleep with her in the book. He spends a year on that island with her. They could have done a lot more in general with that entire section of the movie. They cut out the Lotus Eaters entirely. They cut out the Phaeacians. They cut out the king and queen that he tells his story to, who send him on a boat back to Ithaca. They cut that entire part out. The bag of wind part completely missing from the text. It's whatever. Polyphemus, not missing from the text, missing from the movie. Blah, 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 you get it. I'm kind of just speaking off the top of my head right now. Polyphemus' scene bothered me severely, because not only, okay, I understand if they're going to just take the speaking element out of it entirely, but weirdly, after they blind the Cyclops, because first of all, they don't do the nobody trick, they do not offer him wine, they do not get him drunk, and Odysseus does not use his cunning to convince him that his name is nobody. None of that sort of stuff in the movie. In the movie, instead, they blind the guy, but then they decide to kind of go back on the idea that the Cyclops doesn't speak. They were like, oh, Poseidon, Poseidon, while he's crying because his eyes, he's just been blinded. There's no other Cyclopses, by the way. In the story, there's more Cyclopses, and they come to his aid because he says, nobody is killing me, nobody is stabbing me, and then they leave, obviously, and then they do the trick where they did do the trick where they interacted with the flock of sheep, where they, kind of intermingled themselves in order to get out, and that also worked, but also, I'm just gonna be real with you. I hated this choice in the movie because I understand they needed it because there was not an actual reason for the Cyclops to get up and start chasing them. Odysseus, Matt Damon, I'm going to say, actually, he takes out his bow and proceeds to, like, just to get another thing on this Cyclops, I guess, for some reason, when you could just fucking run. He shoots him in the eye just so him and his men can get noticed right before they get out of the island scot-free. You know what I mean? You don't want to get away scot-free. You want to have a big scene for the audience, you know what I mean? A big thing, but you don't want any dialogue, obviously. You don't want any dialogue like the original text. So, and then, okay, he does not, when they get back to the boat, and he's like in the water chasing them, throwing boulders and whatnot. He's not crying. He does not say anything to his father Poseidon. And Odysseus, unlike in the text where he turns back and goes, and by the way, bitch, my name is not nobody. It's Odysseus, son of Laertes. He doesn't say that in the movie. He just looks back at him. He does not, and then, ergo, how does the Cyclops curse him and his crew if he doesn't have his name? The name is the true magic of somebody. Once you know somebody's name, you can actually curse their name and all that sort of stuff. At least that's how it works in the original version and whatnot. Athena is so reduced. Athena plays a genuine, real part. Women in the story, I'm going to be honest with you, kind of got a nerf. I know that people are trying to be like, it's a more woke version. In all honesty, they kind of dull down the women characters in this movie interpretation. Athena is like this, she's like Matt Damon is like this mental patient, I guess, and he keeps hallucinating her. And Calypso, she's like, who are you talking to again? And then Athena was walking next to him talking about his memories, because for some reason on Calypso's island, they decided to intermingle that with the Lotus Eater bit, where instead of like him going to the island of the Lotus Eaters, they just took the Lotus and put that on Calypso's island, and she uses it to kind of medicinalize him a little bit for about 7 years, and then whatnot. She's like, I loved you. We never actually see a moment of like passion between the two of them. We just see them eating fish together and like kind of like walking around these beaches together and whatnot. It's really weirdly portrayed, not at all like the book, unfortunately. And Athena is not really this sort of like this action. She doesn't go really help Telemachus. She doesn't actually have really any major influence on the story. She's just kind of this woman who shows up every now and then to stare at him a little bit and give him like, the gods do speak in the laughter of a child, in the dinner with the loved ones, in a bountiful harvest. That is the gods speaking to us or whatever. It's not my favorite interpretation. And in all honesty, I think it kind of removes her from being an influence in the story whatsoever. All right. I strongly dislike the fact that they misreferred to Helios's cattle as Apollo's, just because more people are probably familiar with Apollo and the sun and whatever. When you could have just given people the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Greek history, that's totally fine, I guess, if you want to dumb it down a little bit. Okay. He a little bit does the same where he doesn't even include Hermes, because Hermes and Athena, these both are like, these people, they physically help Odysseus by like transforming him, giving him messages, all of these things. And for some reason, they are kind of, their magical, real, in-world, tangible abilities are completely disregarded. And they're actually kind of written out of the story. Okay. Biggest problem, they changed the ending entirely. The ending of the original, Athena, after they just defeat all the suitors, obviously maybe the nation would be a little upset with the idea that a bunch of their noblemen have just been murdered by the suddenly returning king of Ithaca. And Athena arises. This is the moment where Athena actually saves Odysseus from being exiled. In the movie, they just exile him. He goes off with Penelope, I guess, and Telemachus. Even though he helped his father kill these suitors, I guess, is appointed king of Ithaca, which I guess doesn't make any goddamn sense. The movie itself makes an ending that makes less sense than the book, and the book relies on the idea that Athena comes out of nowhere and convinces the entirety of the nation that it's fine that this happened. She saves the public image of Odysseus, and he lives happily ever after with Penelope. It's implied, happily ever after. It ends well, is what I'm trying to tell you. And Telemachus is not a leader. He's not assigned to this ruler-type position and whatnot. It is completely different from what we ended up getting in the theaters. Now, okay, if you want my general diagnoses, this would have worked much better as like an 8-part miniseries where you could really flesh out the time periods. You could really like actually go through every detail of the journey. You could actually perform out the entirety of the story itself. Then you could do like, I don't know, maybe an Iliad follow-up if it really does that well. But that's the thing, is you shouldn't even be thinking about sequels. You should just be focused on telling this one solid enough story. So What would I rate it? A 7 out of 10. I think it's solid enough. Every person should see it in order to formulate an opinion. I think it's spectacally a very good, beautiful looking film. I don't appreciate a lot of the liberties they took with a lot of, and it's too liberal. I mean liberties as in they took liberties with the original story and changed it up in ways that I just don't feel were appropriate, and I don't feel serve the story in any meaningful way. I think that they, if anything, diminished it or made it just more consumable, and maybe more consumable, yes, that makes it more appealing to a general audience. It doesn't always lead to a better film product. It doesn't always lead to a solid interpretation of a real story that has existed for as long as this one has. Ladies and gentlemen, a solid enough movie. Watch it if you want. The tranny and the black girl who's playing the most beautiful woman in the world, they're barely in it, so don't even worry about it. Honestly. And if you want to just wait for it to be on HBO Max or whatever, do that too. It's worth it. It's worth it for seeing in the theaters. It's pretty cool. You know, I love how they did Zeus and Poseidon, where it was like more so that they were like these forces of nature and whatnot. Like how Poseidon was just this absolutely ravenous ocean, and Zeus, that one scene where the boat gets shattered in half and whatnot. I expected more of a legit interpretation of it, where it was like actually just one bolt of lightning cracking the whole thing, blowing it to pieces, all that sort of stuff. But whatever, we all have our own visual interpretations. I didn't mind the way that he chose to do it, where it was a little more just, it was way more in the real moment of it. It felt grounded. And Christopher Nolan, I think that's the whole issue with this movie, is that it tries to abandon the fantastical nature of the Odyssey when the Odyssey is an inherently fantastical story. You know what I mean? Yeah, when the beggar whole thing, the disguise, it's just Matt Damon, but he looks dramatically different because of his, his age, his beard and whatnot, but he's not physically transformed into an old beggar. He wears this cloak around. And Athena, I'm going to keep dogging on this because it bothers me how much they really reduced her in this movie. She's not just a surveyor. She's not this passive, like, oh, I want you to feel a little bad about this. She's like a commanding force in the book, but for some reason they just want her to be like this hint at things type of force in the movie, which I'm not the biggest fan of. It's not for me. Ladies and gentlemen, in general, formulate your own opinions on it. I thought it was solid enough.